The thing that's more intimate, something that's deeper about me, I've found that the people that create most interesting conversations are the number one question I've been asked is, why did you start the Intentional Way podcast and show? You listen to our guests. One of the threads that is common in intentionality is, as I was going through and dealing with some struggles and challenges, I really took time and settled into, there are guests that I want to have on my show. And I'm not afraid to call them out, but some of them might sound kind of crazy to some of you. I want to have, there are a minutia of ways to be able to be intentional. And I will show you some of the things I think are very first step, foundational to intentionality. And I want to tell you a little more about why it means something to me. The third thing I would say that you could do to start being intentional is, I truly believe that if everybody was a little more intentional, that world would be a little better place. And so that's the premise. And I want to make sure that I'm sharing that with the world. Welcome to the Intentional Way, where literally every moment is a step towards purposeful living. I'm Bryan Hatch, here to explore the power of intention with you. Learn from our guests who embody intentionality. I'm glad you're here with me. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Intentional Way. I'm your host, Bryan Hatch, and today we're shaking it up. We're doing something brand new. I'm excited to see your feedback, to hear your comments and questions. This is the first episode of Solo with Intention, and I want to be able to go through a few things that I've been hearing from our followers, our listeners, the people that have been paying attention. I want you to be aware of a couple things that maybe you are not. One, this show goes on video format on YouTube. So if you're like to see the video and you want to see our guests instead of just hear them, you can do that. And you can also listen. We put out a lot of stuff on Instagram and YouTube. We're going to find us. And besides all of the audio podcasting platforms that you're finding us on already. So just want you to be aware of that in case you wanted to see something instead of just listen to it. Although, whatever floats your boat, whatever way you want to do it, that's fine. And today, as I get into this episode with you and with me, it's a little bit different for me. I'm fairly comfortable in front of the camera by myself, but it's also weird because what I love about the Intentional Way and our episodes that we shoot is that there is a raw realness to who I'm speaking with and how they're responding. Every bit of that is very intentional because having conversations should feel new. It should feel curious. It should feel novel. And so even some of the guests that I have on, they want to share with me more things, but I want to experience it like you do, the audience, in some ways. So we don't go through scripted questions. We don't go through scripts that we're expecting. Obviously, each of our guests has an experience and they have expertise. And so I want to showcase those. But I intentionally do not script this show so that it is organic in nature and feels just real. That matters to me, especially in a world of all the AI and there are platforms right now. I can get on my platform right now and create a podcast episode between two speakers, even pop in my voice so you wouldn't know that it's not me on the AI side of fence. And we could have a discussion on the podcast. For me, I don't love that. I can appreciate that AI is trying to help in some way, shape, or form, but I don't really love the fact that there are AI tools that will create a podcast out of a subject. So for me, the theme of the shows hold weight. We do work on those intentionally, and we want to bring you, our listeners, just phenomenal content. So if there are questions you have, I really request that you go rate at the bottom of wherever you're listening to this, or make a comment, somehow post a question, because I'm actually pulling those, and in these Solo with Intention episodes, I will be answering those. So if you've ever had a question about intention, or why, or how, or where, or anything you want to know about intentionality, I may not have the answer, but I surely will be expressing that and be able to talk to you about it. So please comment and let me know. As I do with all of these episodes, I start off with, tell us something. I ask it's been 99% of our guests, tell us something that most people wouldn't know about you just by looking from the outside looking in. That is, social media. You can go look them up on their profiles online and find something about them. But what is something that's unique about you? I do that because I really want to know people differently than the world gets to know people. And that's one of the reasons why I asked that question. So as I seek to answer that question myself, there are many things that come to my mind of what is something that not a lot of people know about me. And there are the surfacey level things that I don't feel like go into a lot of depth. I mean, I've mentioned it maybe on one of the episodes. I really love soccer. I love football. And that's something that's come later in life compared to some of the other passions I've had in my life. So that I feel like is more surface level. And you may or may not be able to know that. I don't have it on these social profiles, I think. No, I don't. So you may not know that unless you've talked with me individually or know that. But I do watch. But the thing that's more intimate, something that's deeper about me that I could express about, something that's unique about me, may not be that crazy if you've been a listener on this podcast, but I really find talking with people fascinating. And for some reason in my life, there are places I go that I am drawn to certain people. Like there are people in life that we just naturally could be friends with, whether you are or not, whether that's somebody in your neighborhood or whether it's somebody in your religious groups or whether it's somebody in your networking business groups. They're just people that you just sync with, right? And there are some people that I feel like are maybe looked at and seen differently. Rough around the edges, or I don't know, maybe has a stigma, or maybe they would even say like, oh, no one talks to me. But I've found that the people that create most interesting conversations are typically those that have a guard up. So that's kind of something that's unique or interesting about me is I look for people that have a guard up. And it's not because I feel like I'm always going to be able to get their guard down by any stretch. Like there are people in my life that I've sought to like find out more about them and they just don't let me go there with them. And that's okay. That I don't have to do that. It's not my prerogative, but my intent is to find people that have that wall up and to break it down in some way that we just have a cool conversation that means something. I'm not one that really loves a lot of surfacey conversation. I will talk about the weather, and I have talked about the weather. I'm not saying that it's outside of my vernacular, but those kind of conversations don't fill my bucket, and I don't think they fill anybody's buckets. They're actually ones that we throw away. And we'll be talking a little more about that in our episode today. So that's something that's a little bit more unique about me. I like to find people that are maybe hard to converse with, or that I find that they're difficult to converse with, and see if I can get in there and find something cool about them. And I have found every time that someone's allowed me to go there with them, I think I've learned far more from those types of people than the ones that are just easy to have conversations with, which I appreciate. I appreciate people that are easy to have conversations with. But those that are a little bit harder to, it's fun. So if you're out there and you're harder to have a conversation with, thanks for either letting me talk with you, or maybe thanks for not letting me talk to you. We'll see how that goes. So that's a little more about me. As I seek to provide as much value in this episode as possible, I want to answer some of the questions that I'm getting most often as the host of The Intentional Way. And the number one question I've been asked is, why did you start the Intentional Way podcast and show? That is quite a long story, but I will do all that I can to condense that in a meaningful way that is useful to you, the listener. And I think that, number one, we have to realize that on this earth, like we're all running around as human beings and we can think about our thoughts. That's what separates us from animals and other, insects and creatures and things of that nature. So to me, there has to be a reason we're here. However you want to believe into that, whatever your spiritual or religious or otherwise beliefs are, you're welcome to believe what you want. For me, there's a reason why we're here. And so if I'm here and there's a reason I'm here, then I have a purpose to be here uniquely. And you look at the famous people, the people that have changed the world, the people that we give credit to changing the world, that go down in our history books that have done this or that or the other, you could look at their lives and say that they were built for more than just what they were. And I don't think, I've read enough into this, some of the people that I like to listen to, I know that the majority of human beings are just normal human beings that don't get a lot of notoriety, that don't get a lot of fame or fortune, and I've come to the grips that's okay. I do believe that each one of us can reach some level of success within our own sphere of influence, and we can continue to grow that. I don't think there's a limit to what we can do. And so, there's certain things that happen. As you work hard, you'll create some cool things, and then maybe people will notice you. But there's a lot of us that just, we live our lives, we run our businesses, we take care of our families, and relatively go unknown, go unseen. but not unseen to everybody. And so the last few years of my life have been challenging. I'll just say it that way. And maybe there'll be a day that I go into deeper detail about that, but they have been rough for various reasons, from personal to business. And as I was seeking understanding to get clear, listen to our guests. One of the threads that is common in intentionality is clarity on what you want. And if you're not clear on what you want, then it's hard to know where you want to end up. Even though that this is about the journey and not just the outcome or where we end in the ultimate level of our success, I was struggling to figure out a little more about what I really wanted. I thought I knew what I wanted, and I went after that and did some things and, got bloodied and bruised along the way and learned some lessons, which are valuable. I think that everybody needs to do that. If you have something big that you want to accomplish, then you will meet some level of challenge in your life to attain it. They don't just all come naturally and easily. Some do, and that's okay. But typically it's after a lot of hard work that those things kind of seem like they come through really easily. So as I was going through and dealing with some struggles and challenges, I really took time and settled into what are my unique talents in this life? What am I uniquely good at in this life? And I've actually done an exercise before in my life to kind of figure it out, because there's days when we all feel kind of bummed, and I've had some down days. And so I like to look at those talents, those things that I think that I'm pretty good at when I'm not doing well, when I'm mentally or emotionally just a little bit off, because it helps me get back on it a little faster and at minimum minimize the amount of downtime I have feeling bad for myself or feeling sorry for myself. So as I got clear about those things, I spent a lot of time meditating and a lot of time praying. I believe in God. And so I was asking him, what do you think I should do? And a blessing that I received, one of our guests on our show, Dennis Deaton, talks about this. If you want to go back to that episode, you can definitely do that. In my church, there's just a blessing that you receive that's really personal. I would say maybe all blessings are very personal, but this one is written down and transcribed and recorded. And that's pretty unique, I think. And I don't care what religion you are. If you record someone blessing you, usually some wisdom in that. So as I went through some of those things that were said and this blessing that I received, going through what I was feeling right now in my life and the things that I've overcome in my life and the challenges I'm facing currently, I got really clear that one of the things I'm here to do is to provide light into intentionality. And I struggle with that a little bit because I recognize there's different personalities in this world. There's different skill sets. There are people that are talented way differently than I'm talented. And I look at people like my wife that is talented in several things that I'm not talented in. And so there's this complex inner relationship that we have with people that we all shouldn't have the exact same skill sets. And still, when I got clear about it, the more we are intentional in our lives, the better it is. And I truly don't care what your personality is. I don't care if you're a fly by the seat of your pants, if you're like a wildflower and you just go wherever the wind blows you. You can still be who you are and have intention. So that for me rang really true as I got clear about this is one of the things that I want to shed some light on. And there's been other books. There's people like Wayne Dyer. There's other people like Eckhart Tolle. There's other people that I've followed and listened to in the past in personal development spaces that talk about intention. I just don't see there's a lot of people talking about intention the way that I see it right now. And so I felt like, hey, I needed to add my voice to those that have already been there. I stand on the shoulders of giants of people that have already discussed this topic, but the topic is never ending and we're dealing with complex, different issues in our society today. And so when I got clear about, I need to be talking about this subject because I am typically intentional, not always intentional, but typically intentional. The words that come out of my mouth, the things that I do, the experiences that I have are for a purpose. They're not just whimsical. And I like to do things that are, I didn't think I was going to do that, and I did it. It doesn't mean I can't have spontaneity. It means that there's intention built into it. So I got clear about that, and my skill sets, my background is in digital marketing and automation practices and a lot of the techie stuff that a lot of companies have someone like me that know how to do. because most people don't want to do what I do. And so when I coupled that I could share this message with a podcast, with a show, and I have a cool setup behind me that I get to bring guests in and, talk about some cool subjects, it's just a beautiful thing to do. So I got clear that was one of the reasons why I've been put here, one of the reasons why I need to talk about this subject, because I can benefit other people by doing so. And I've got a cool network. Some of the people that I know that you have met now through my podcast are worthy of being known. And there are many people that maybe don't have huge platforms that are worthy of being known, that you should know them. And there are big people that I'm after. There are guests that I want to have on my show. And I'm not afraid to call them out, but some of them might sound kind of crazy to some of you. I want to have Steve Nash on this podcast. I want to have Greg Maddox on this podcast. Those are two very intentional sports athletes. Obviously, I'd love to have Messi on this podcast, which is something I have to translate into English because I do speak some Spanish. But there are people that I'd love to have on the show, and we'll see as I continue to put in the effort and the hours here to get bigger and better guests. But I know that if I bring people to this conversation, we can change lives. So that's a little more about why I began the show. And so I coupled those skill sets that I have with the technology that is out there, and I'm running, man. I'm going to continue to do this podcast. And, currently right now I'm looking for sponsors. I'm looking for people to sponsor the show. We can grow it, that we can get a studio and get some other things happening that reduce the burden on production, because it's a lot. I don't know if you guys are aware of how much the editing goes into this, and lighting and framing and time and all kinds of stuff. So that's a little more about the why behind the intentional way. I truly believe that if everybody was a little more intentional, that world would be a little better place. And so that's the premise. And I want to make sure that I'm sharing that with the world. Speaking of intentionality, what is your intention for listening to this episode? Are you simply passing the time? Or are you here because you truly want to improve something in your life? The way we act is a direct reflection on what matters to us. So right now, while you're here, take a quick moment and rate this episode, or leave a quick comment. Pulling your thoughts into words is powerful, and it turns passive listening into action. When you act on your intention, that's where change happens. Your rating, your comment, your share, they're not just clicks. They're a signal that what we're building together matters, that conversations like this deserve to grow. Each action helps this message reach more people who are looking to live intentionally. And no matter if you're listening to this show on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or any other podcasting platform out there, if you scroll to the bottom of the page or you go to our show page, you can easily rate and comment. We pull your comments and actually put them into our show. And it's another way that you can tell the algorithm that intentionality really matters. It takes just a few seconds, and it creates a bigger ripple effect than you might realize. I created this show because I wanted to help people find their way, find the intentional way. Question number 2 is, what does intentionality mean, and how do we begin to implement it in our lives? Obviously, if you've listened to any of our episodes, you can find ways to do that. There are a minutia of ways to be able to be intentional. And I will show you some of the things I think are very first step, foundational to intentionality. And I want to tell you a little more about why it means something to me. But it starts a little more with a story, or at least the research that I've done. When I look at, I've follow Dr. Amen. He's a brain doctor, and he talks a lot about it. I've met him. I know him. If you haven't learned of him, he's been on many podcasts out there as well. And there's a lot that happens with the brain. The brain is used to creating synapses and firing and basically trying to shortcut the path. And the easiest way to explain this is when you first do something difficult. Okay, you're going to learn how to drive a car. When you drive a car, it's difficult at first. There's so many things to remember, looking at the rearview mirror and buckling your seat and making sure the mirrors are adjusted and all the things that you take for granted after you know how to drive. But when you first started, it's stressful. And even if you're comfortable, there's still some stress in it. And so just like that, the brain is working and putting a lot of energy. It actually sucks a lot of energy out of our bodies when we are doing something for the first time, especially when it's dangerous or risky, because it creates a focus. It creates intention and a presence, right? So as I end my podcast, you can be intentional by being completely present. So when there's that presence of mind, it actually takes a lot of energy out of your body. your brain doesn't like to expend that much energy. And so as soon as you learn something or repeat it enough times, the brain's like, oh, we got this. We got it. Now we can do it on autopilot. Okay. That autopilot feature is a super benefit to a lot of things in our lives. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't have autopilot in some level. Like, I don't want to have to learn how to brush my teeth every time I brush my teeth. Just look it up. And still, while I'm brushing my teeth, I can be intentional. So that's the funny thing about this is our brain is naturally trying to shortcut things, or at least I learned that once, or I got it down so many times. I don't need to think about this or put so much energy into this thing. And so then we get into default mode. We just do things the way we do them. And I think that that's the first level of, kind of fading away or being asleep. And when you are asleep in your life more than you're awake, that's a big deal. I also define intentionality is being awake and being present to what's going on around us. I do not believe that we can actually know all of what's happening in a current moment all around us, especially in a conversation or a relationship. We don't know what's going on in a person's head. We don't know what factors are making them be the way they are in the scenario. We just don't know everything. You can ask questions and get closer, but you're never going to know all of it. And so the way we get intentional is by approaching things like they're new when they're not. And if you're doing something mundane or something that you want to be rote or default or easy, then still there should be intentionality in it, okay? What I'm saying is when you get in the car to go drive the car, there's many times where we drive and we go 5 miles and forget that we even drove those 5 miles because we've driven them so many times. It's like out of mind, out of sight, just we're not thinking about it. But while we're doing those things, if we can approach it as if it was the first time. Now, if you approach driving the vehicle like it's the first time, you might adjust things a little differently. You might scoot a little closer to the seat. You might turn off your phone. You might do things differently, right? But you can also do the mundane things with intentionality, meaning that you set some kind of intention above and beyond the default. So, okay, I'm not just going to listen to music while I drive. I'm going to do X. Or I'm going to think through this problem, or I'm going to meditate while I'm driving, or I'm going to talk to this person, or I'm going to call someone that's in need. There's a reason for being in the car at this time, as opposed to just getting from point A to point B, which is the core reason of being in a car, is to get from somewhere and get somewhere else. The second part of intentionality is just to set an intention, okay? What that means is, and I've said this in a couple of different episodes that we've had already, is wherever you are, know your intention for that time, okay? If you just go where you've always gone, you'll get what you always had. So set an intention, okay? Like literally for the next 15 minutes, what's the intention? Okay, you're at work. Great. You're at work. The next 15 minutes, I'm going to get the most out of this project, or I'm going to finish this thing twice as fast as I thought I could. Or whatever the intention is, don't just go through the motions. What is the intention? I want to do this better than I normally do. I want to do it faster than I normally do it. I want to share the success with somebody else in my company. If you're at work, there's ways you can be intentional about what you're doing. But think about it. Okay, you're on the way to the bathroom. What's your intention going to the bathroom? I know that sounds really crazy, okay? But I have an intention that while I'm going to the bathroom, I'm going to think through the biggest struggle one of my children is having and see if any new thoughts come up. See how that's a different intention than just going to the bathroom? It's using every space that I have that I would have just zoned out and using it to my advantage, to something that I want to have happen. That is critical. So that second piece of just setting an intention everywhere and anything you're doing is critical to your success in intention. Now, the third thing I would say that you could do to start being intentional is this. Write down the 3 things that cause you the biggest frustration on a typical day, okay? You might not be a frustrated person. That's fine. But I want you to write down 3 things that cause you struggle or that bother you on a daily basis, okay? But don't write down, I get mad. No, write down what is happening, who's involved, in as much detail as you can, right? Give yourself a few paragraphs, okay? Write it out. And then below the what happens, okay, I want you to write, my intention is, and set an intention for that. So that the next time it happens, if it happens every day, then it should be something that you can now set an intention for. So if this frustrates me, it happens every day, then my intention is to do this thing. You might look at that and say, oh, Bryan, that's just habit formation and habit change, like James Clear says in Atomic Habits. This is more, but yes, they coincide. That's why it's one of my favorite books, okay? But at the same token, if you identify things you want to change or things that frustrate you, and then you set the intention, then you're going to find a different outcome. And it's testing. You don't have to do the same thing every time in order to find new things. Just having an intention will change the outcome, okay? It might be just to make somebody smile. It might be to just make that child smile at the end of their day when they're always mad about their homework. Find a way to make them smile. So those are the ways that I would say to build a foundation of intentionality in your life. I think it's critical, and I really believe that you will have more success in your life if you just set these easy pieces of intention in your life and start there. The last question that I've seen come across my desk several times by our listeners, and I've even asked guests this question with little success because it starkly changes the conversation, but I think it's just really useful to talk about. It's, where do I see myself not living intentionally? Or where do I struggle with intentionality? Now, as a host of this show, I don't purport to be perfect. I don't purport to be the 100% intentional guy. I'm on a journey to learn what other people are seeing. I have my 2 cents. I have learning, understanding, my background. But I also want to find out how I can be better. So there's many ways that I see that I don't live intentionally, and it's frustrating, especially when this is the subject that I espouse, right? Number one, though, is a concept of being asleep and awake, right? Just like if I'm driving down the freeway and I can't remember what I've even thought about for the last 10 minutes because I'm just in like default mode, that is probably the most frustrating thing for me, is to see that I'm not being intentional, okay? And that's a general level. I'll get into some detail here, but at a general level, it's just recognizing that I'm not being intentional. When I'm at a place, when I'm in a conversation and I'm just kind of like mulling around, it's like, crap. Be here, Bryan. Be present. What's the intention? What's the intention right now? Just not having that is tough. And I think the more that you are thinking about intentionality, the more that you'll see that in your life, that you're in the default mode, that you're in the, like, I've done this a million times mode. And I want to get out of that. Like, literally, I want to be out of that as much as possible during a day, to where I've done like 15-minute reminders. What's my intention? What's my intention? Every 15 minutes. That seems like it might be distracting at times, but really it helps me find a way back into being intentional. So recognizing how much I'm not intentional is frustrating, but I still believe that I'm more intentional than your average Joe, I think, about things. The second piece of intentionality that I really struggle with is when I do something that I've already done that I hated I did. For example, there are certain people in my life that I'm hyper aware of who I am and what I'm doing and how I'm acting around them. And I recognize, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be either frustrating, or I don't want to be Mr. Opinionated, or I don't want to be the guy that's judgmental. I want to hear them. And yet in certain circumstances, in certain human beings I get around, I have a hard time with it. Like, I forget. It's almost as if me being in their vicinity causes me to be asleep. And then I say things or I do things in a way that I've told myself I don't want to do. Doesn't mean that I'm not trying to be me. Some people think, oh, well, you're not being authentic. No, if you're a jerk and you recognize that you're being a jerk, you should stop being a jerk. I guess if you want to not be a jerk. And in those situations, I don't want to be a jerk. So when I get around certain people and good people, there's certain things that come up. And I've noticed with one person that I talk to that I'm critical about a few elements of my life. So when I talk to this person, when he and I talk, I'm critical about certain aspects of my life, really critical. And I don't even know if he notices, to be honest. Maybe he just, like, that's the way I am around him. And so he doesn't notice it, but I'm recognizing, like, I'm not that same critical around other people. Why am I critical around this person? Not to him, but just critical about other circumstances of my life. So that's frustrating to me, to go into a situation knowing I want it to change and then still acting the way that I did that I don't want to act like. So that's frustrating. So those are some elements. The other piece that I alluded to earlier, like, dude, life just throws curveballs at you. Things are challenging. Life is meant to be challenging. So I recognize that. And when I look at intention, I see that as something better than a goal. And I have intentions in my life to improve certain things, to accomplish certain things, to reach certain outcomes. And I know that I can't control the outcome, but I can control my effort. And so when I look at the intentions that I have that are more visions, like I have a vision of this, I have a vision of that being this way, or having my house be a certain way, or having this relationship look a certain way. When the evidence points the opposite direction, that's really challenging for me. And it points to the inner person who I am and says, you're not enough. And that's when those words come out of my mind or my mouth, that really hurts. And it ruins my intentionality for a time, because it's a way that I was, or a way that I saw myself, and I don't want to be that way. And so I work through those instances. But that's a little more about the way that I see intentionality, how to get more out of your life because of intentionality. And I think that there's just a lot to be said. So if you want to know something about intentionality, I can ask our guests. I can answer those questions here on these Solo with Intention episodes. I'm glad you've joined me. I hope this episode has made a shift in your life, or helped you see your life in a different way, to get out of default mode, get into an intentional mode, and just be a better person. And I hope you'll come back and listen to our next episode. Or if you haven't listened to some of our previous episodes, go check them out now. It's a great opportunity. Talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us on The Intentional Way. I'm Bryan Hatch, and it's been a true privilege to share this time with you. If today's episode has inspired you in any way, shape, or form, please subscribe, follow, and download our episodes. Your support not only helps us grow, it also enables us to bring more insightful conversations and exceptional guests right to you. Living intentionally begins with a single step, yours. So let's make the most of it. Until next time, seek intention by being completely present.